So let's get right into it together because we've got a lot to talk about here, right? So I'm really excited. Let's just do intros and then we'll get into conversations, right? So I'll start with who I am and then let's just sort of go around the circle, which the circle for me is me, Megan, and Sara. I'm Steve Oakers with the Steve Oakers Group in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And you are listening to a conversation, which is Leadership Conversations with Megan and Steve. And we have invited our friend, Miss Sara Gray, today to talk about leadership, what she's doing within her different businesses, her law practice, and then ultimately just spill the beans about this CARES Act because I'm overwhelmed and Megan's overwhelmed. So we thought, let's invite our friends that know more than we do to teach us and then hopefully teach you as well. So I'm Steve. Megan, who are you?
I'm Megan. I own a residential real estate brokerage in Grand Haven called Blue West Properties and run a 501c3 called the B event that we were blessed to have Sara speak at, not this past year, but the year before. So, and I'm grateful to have you to chat with us.
So great.
Miss Sara.
Great. So happy to be here. Yep. So hi, I am Sara Gray or Sara Lachman, depending on where you meet me. And I've been an attorney for 16 years at Miller Johnson, and there you would always find me as Sara Lachman. I also, though, am a small business owner, which gives me a very unique lens into the current situation because it's one thing to give legal advice if you're an accountant. It's one thing to give accounting advice. It's a very different thing to be making decisions as a small business owner, as you guys know. And so I do feel like I have a little bit of a unique lens into the very serious pressures that small business owners are feeling right now. So in terms of businesses, I have opened an indoor cycling studio, Lunar Cycle. Both of you have worked out there.
We love
it. Absolutely love it.
Megan, yep. I think Megan's still sore from a month and a half ago, but you know, I'm good.
Gotcha. I've owned a business. Yes, that's a good one. I've owned a business, Photonic, for a few years now, where we have design supplements for people. And then I will also say, without revealing too much, I do believe that some of the best opportunities come at darkest times. So I am currently working on a third venture right now.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah, so I mean, that's why we've invited you, right? Ultimately, is one, we love you. We know who you are and you know who we are because we did this in front of 500 people last time at Frederick Meyer Gardens. And now we do it in front of however many people want to join in this conversation. But ultimately, I think it's for us to understand like how you operate, right? And so the conversation is leadership conversations. I want to get into a lot on the CARES Act because I think that is leading our companies and leading our friends and family and those we care about, especially being small business owners. But also, I think to start out, I want to get into a little bit about you know that idea of okay, how do I lead myself in a different time, right? We're in a different time and place. So you know, where do you sit right now? I guess like physically, like how are you operating as of a week ago when we were told, hey, you know, you probably should just hunker down. What are you doing within that space? And then maybe just what was leadership before, and then where are you heading, or where has it changed in the last week for you?
Okay. So I think how the days have blended. Like if I told you right now that it was Saturday, you might believe me, right? So I'm not exactly sure, but I think the studio has now been closed by executive order for well over a week. We were put on limited restrictions initially because we're a fitness studio. And so we were initially put on limited restrictions, and then very quickly after that, our doors were closed 100%. In terms of my law practice, I had the good fortune of thinking, I think everybody's going to hunker down. I'm going to take all my things home. So I've actually been practicing from home for 3 weeks as just sort of a precaution, with precautions. And it's an interesting time, right? Everybody can relate to this. I've got 4 sons We all pile in to one little study in a day. I am now serving as schoolmaster along with my law practice and trying to manage, businesses virtually. I'm like everybody else, just kind of touch and go throughout the day, trying to make sure that do you have a sense of feeling both overwhelmed and like you have way too much time on your hands all at once? Yeah. It's a weird space.
Yeah. Yeah, Amy and I both yelled at each other because we didn't take the garbage out this morning, right? But it's not Thursday, that's tomorrow, right? So we both were like, why didn't you take the garbage out? Well, why didn't you? Like, and then I was like, well, we don't have to today.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Yeah.
I mean, I think the thing that's reassuring is we're all in the same boat. And so we're all giving each other a lot of grace around the fact that we aren't necessarily, showing up in the ways that we historically have. And you would ask me also, so in terms of where I sit, that's just physically where I sit, right?
Yep.
In a little tiny room for about, 12 to 13 hours a day. And then I wander around a couple of other small rooms for the remaining wakeful hours. But all of us are in some pretty confined quarters. I don't think that means that we need to be in a confined mindset. I really don't. I just don't. Because, all of us go through process and stages in a time like this. And it's okay for all of us to feel sad, certainly to feel worried, certainly to feel uncertain, because there isn't a human being alive who can tell us how we're going to get out of this. And there isn't a human being alive who can tell us with any level of certainty or credibility, you're going to be fine. We don't get to have the luxury of any sense of certainty right now. And when I was a baby lawyer, one of the mantras that I developed for myself was get comfortable being uncomfortable. I would walk into any number of rooms and just tell myself that quietly, just be comfortable being uncomfortable. It was how I learned to get by. And I find that that's also good advice in a global pandemic. We don't have the luxury of feeling comfortable right now. And we can decide if that means that we're going to sit on the sidelines of our lives for the next 2 to more likely 5 or 6 months, or if we're going to revamp, retool.
Yeah. You said the other day, I thought it was really interesting when we were on the phone, that you were leading inside of Lunar and being really proactive and thinking not about what can't I do right now, but what can I do right now. And I thought the leadership that you had in that was just, it was a really good shift. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I actually have spent most of today bouncing between legal work and getting ready to take Lunar virtual. So we will, I hope by Monday, be ready to have virtual classes. We will be loading up a large truck full of my bikes and be able to distribute them to customers. Steve,
I want one.
Good. Make sure you get it early because they will go fast. But we will be delivering bikes to people's house because good health is critical right now, and good mental health is critical right now, and we can find ways to stay active and to stay connected. So that is an enormous shift for us. It's not anything I was ever wanting to take on, but it's where we are. It's an option I have. It's an avenue I have. I bet the two of you have never thought, you know what I really want to do? I want to tour houses virtually. Right. I want to sell homes virtually. I bet that was never on your task list, but that's a path for you right now. And so the people who can pivot will thrive. I remember once they were talking about evolution, and what the misconception is that evolution is the idea of it's the survival of the strongest, the survival of the fittest. The concept of evolution is really about the survival of those who adapt. So if you are able to adapt to whatever change is happening, you can survive, you can thrive. If you insist on the world staying the same, good luck. It has changed, and it's not going back. We're not going in reverse on this one.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with a pastor friend, different than the one we're going to be talking to tomorrow, but I just said, at what point do congregations feel okay congregating again, right? Like, where does, like, that, is that a year from now? Like, that I feel okay not being 6 feet apart, right? Like, do they have to take out half of the chairs or 3/4 of the chairs? So yeah, it's never going to go back to the same, right? It's so true. So in that space of leading, then is it speed? How are you making those decisions, you know, with accuracy of saying this is the right course for me, yet also, like, you know, the balance of the speed of movement. So how do I adapt quickly, but also how do I adapt in a way that I feel like has a plan? How are you balancing, I need a plan for those planners out there in the world, and then probably a little bit more like the three of us, as we just make it up and keep going, and hopefully that we keep going fast enough that a couple of things that might mess up, it's okay because we're going fast enough. How are you balancing the plan compared to the, like, speed?
That's such a good question. I love the planners of the world. I'm a systems human, right? That's how my mind works. I really, really like to systematically lay things out and move step over step. Unfortunately, for the planners of the world, this is not your optimal environment. So you need to tap in to some of your weaker skills, or tap into some other people around you who can help you compensate. Right. What is a weird thing that we're all experiencing right now is that we don't get the benefit of leaders who've been through this. Unless anybody knows somebody who went through the flu of 1918, we don't have anyone near us who can say, well, this is what it's like when the entire globe shuts down due to a pandemic. If we have, you know, mentors in some of the other countries who really took some big hits with Ebola or SARS or things like that, they might be able to give us some insight. But if they weren't also small business owners who are in our sector, whatever, I mean, it's going to be really hard to translate it. So we are all starved for people to be able to tell us, this is your path. Megan, you know, like, tell me, Steve and Megan, when you go to make decisions, when you go to chart out new territory, don't you usually consult with a handful of people who've already been there and are a little further down the road and say, how did you do this? Do you usually do that?
Yeah.
Do you do
I'm
this?
probably like 75% of the time. The rest of it I just make up.
Yeah, but I mean,
if I'm really being honest, like, you know, there's this balance, right, of just like, hey, I gotta go, and I don't, if there's no one in front of me that's gone before, like, that's okay, I gotta go, right? But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty, which is different in this situation. Usually you could say, well, I'm gonna look at what California did, or I'm gonna look at New York, and in West Michigan, we're probably at least 6 months behind, if not 5 years behind, depending on what the subject matter is, right? There is no, like, I can, you know, I got a week's head up from my Zillow rep saying, this crap is going to happen. It's happening in Seattle. Steve, you've got a week before it's going to happen to you. I had 1 week, right? Maybe a week ahead of everybody else, but not enough.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. We have about 6 to 7 days of data we can look to say, okay, well, this likely, what did they do? Oh, let's see what they've done in the last 7 days. You know, it's just, there's really not a lot. And the same is true for the law. The same is true for the different loan availability. If you call the SBA right now with questions about the SBA packages that are coming out, they're going to tell you, well, we're learning this in real time along with you.
Right.
This is brand new to everybody. So we really don't have the luxury of a lot of excessive planning. People who implement quickly, people who are willing to grab hold of the opportunity to pivot and change, even if it's done imperfectly, those will be the people that we'll still see in 6 months, because the really hard, ugly truth that breaks all of our hearts, I know it does, because I know you two so well, and I know that you feel for the people around you. The fact of the matter is, unless something changes very, very significantly with how things are being managed, how the damages are being mitigated, is 50% of our peers likely won't be here in 6 months. They will not be able to weather the storm. They won't. I hate it that it's true. But debt is not a substitute for revenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great point, because I'd love to move into some of the CARES Act, but I've had that conversation with a lot of business owners, right? And saying, you know, I get the idea of the loan, but it isn't cash flow. I'm not cash flowing. I am just Band-Aiding. And how long can I Band-Aid not having cash flow, right?
It's not, yeah. And I hate to interrupt, it's not even just not cash flow. Think of everything that you've built over a long time,
yeah,
and how it's just kind of withering, right? All the systems that you've put in place, if you're have done marketing, if you've done advertising, if you all these different things, if you have memberships or client, any of these different pieces in place, we aren't building on those, right? They're just sitting there, in many respects, kind of withering for us. So we have to be able to find ways to survive that are outside of just holding our breath.
I love what you said about, you know, the idea of relaunch, right? Like rebrand, relaunch. Lunar just opened, you know, and I certainly feel that way too. Like, no, I just built this whole thing and we're doing really great. And I love my team. But I like the idea of the incubation of, you know, what does it look like when we come back out, and what can we be doing on that side? I think that
yes. And so a couple of good things to keep in mind. One, some things that you have been working on that weren't working, this is a nice time to put them to rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there were things that you've been slogging through that you really, really believed in and thought should work, but it wasn't, this is a fine time to put it on the shelves, and nobody's going to ask a question, right? Just go ahead and put it on the shelf. If there are other things that you've had that you've been thinking about, right? Like I told you, I'm working on a third venture right now. Like I have multiple different moving pieces going into something. You're going to love it. You're just going to love it. And I mean, and the ball is able to move very, very fast right now on it, because it turns out there's a lot of people with time on their hands, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who are excited for anything that feels positive right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who will gravitate towards people who are still willing to be thinking about growth. So this is a great time. If you've had an idea that you thought maybe this would work, I hate to say it, I don't want it to sound callous, but what is true about the fact that in 6 months, so many places that all of us love and cherish and would like to see survive and thrive, many of them won't be there. It does mean that in the next 6 months, for people who have high risk tolerance, are resourceful, and have a strong gut, you know, where they can take some bad days, there will be some opportunity for new things to grow. That's how it works. That's just how life works.
I like that. Yeah. And I'd like, talk a little bit when we go into the CARES Act piece of it about the team and who you think, you know, we really need right now as our team.
Yeah, I'd love to just move into that, right? I think I've heard so much nuggets on like how to lead right now, and how into some meat and bones of like the things you have started doing for yourself since the CARES Act has come out, into things that you would suggest a small business doing, a medium business, a large, but also like an individual that might not be the sole proprietor of a business, right? I think we have plenty of people that are independent contractors that maybe don't even have an LLC set up, right? What do they do? And then also we've got plenty of just individuals that might have just been laid off, right? So what is the CARES Act? Like, give us some meat and potatoes of the CARES Act kind of thing, and how you're moving into it, and then how you're communicating with people on it.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I keep looking around. I have 1 million pieces of paper on my desk.
No, it's great.
All related, and I kind of want to be able to use a couple different things as touch points.
You're fine.
As we all know, there's been a tremendous amount of legislation and a number of executive orders that have come out, no matter what state you're in, right? So there is a lot to be tracking right now, the best sources are always going to be primary sources. They're doing a good job of breaking things down into fairly digestible pieces. So for example, if you are in Michigan and you have a question right now, whether or not your business can operate, whether you're an independent contractor and you can take on certain types of work, look for the executive orders themselves. The other reason that's important is there's a lot of bad information going around, and not because of anybody's fault, but because there's just so much to absorb in such a short period of time. We're all drinking from a fire hose, and it's not going to get better anytime soon, right? There's a flood of information right now. So do your best to check your primary sources. Even if you're consulting with somebody, double check them. They're learning it in real time with you, right? So go actually look at the order, read it for yourself as best you can, and then come up with smartly crafted questions or poorly crafted questions, and then you'll figure it out as you go, right? But the same thing is true for anything related to all of the different potential grants and loans. The SBA has been doing a nice job of putting together information. I'm actually amazed and terribly encouraged by how many different webinars are out there, how many different blog articles are out there. It's been like a week, and there's more material than any of us can get through, right? So find a couple of people who talk in a way that you relate to or understand, or they touch on the things that matter to you most, and then follow them, and then continuously try to find some other things. But try those primary sources. The SBA has really, really good stuff. And to that same extent, your local communities also have them. For example, if you live in Grand Rapids, the Chamber is doing a nice job of putting out information, and they're also partnering with other people who are in a good position to put out information. So, there are a lot of resources out there. The closer that you get to the organizations that are actually distributing funds or making the rules, the better. And I don't want to just like verbally vomit, so I'll kind of stop and make sure that you're redirecting me into the stuff that you really want to know. Megan, I know one of your questions though that you would ask was people you want to surround yourself with, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think that goes into a conversation I had this morning with a couple of people. Is like, what is your lane? What is your thing that you're uniquely suited for? And how can you lead that so well that other people that are in the other lane can lead theirs well? And together we can become a better part, right? And so I'm not an accountant. I'm dyslexic and ADD, right? I can do this. I am good at this, right? This leading of a conversation and putting people together. So I'm going to do this really well, and I'm really going to hope that the people that I trust are going to do their part really well, and together we're going to be a better whole, right? So I think that's in that, probably that conversation or question that Megan has is, who's the other parts? Who, if I know I'm uniquely this, who are the parts that need to be part of the whole?
Well, and I got it yesterday, right? So, we were saying SBA for the small business loan, but really, are you, they said, well, am I calling the SBA? And I said, I would call your banker. I would call the bankers that that handle SBA loans. And even if they don't know what's going on right now, get that meeting scheduled for next week, Wednesday, once they can, wrap their minds around it. So is that
I would recommend going to the SBA right now. They're gonna have the best information, the most current information, and they might even say, listen, I called the SBA 48 hours ago, and she literally said, hey, we're doing our best. We're all getting up to speed right along with you. And if you have a banker who tells you that they know better than the SBA, watch out, right? I mean, if they know before the institutions that are marshaling this know, that might be a little bit of overconfidence that would put up some red flags for me. I do think your point is well taken, though, that next week, a lot of people will have more information. One of the biggest areas of confusion is there's a handful of different loan options or grant options that are available. And I think the fact that there are a handful of different things available that's making people's heads spin. It's like, do I apply for one? Do I apply for all of them? Are they all loans? Are they all grants? Some of them convert, you know, between the two. And I think that is why we're seeing people feel so uncertain of what to do. But I hate to say this too. Some of it is going to go real fast and some of it may be gone, right? So there was the initial bit of relief that was going to come out for us here in Kent County, along with 10 other counties. The Right Place, which is an excellent organization, they were charged with dispersing about $1 million in grants to small businesses. That $1 million is spread over 11 counties, and the maximum allowed under it is $10,000. Now that's 100 loans over 100 grants over 11 counties, unless the grants are smaller than 10,000. And so they were looking at applications as they, you know, on a rolling basis. So I think, is it Wednesday? I think it's Wednesday.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, if you haven't applied for that, hurry up and get that in. Don't even listen to another minute of this. Go jump online or play this in the background, whatever, but jump online and get your application in with the Right Place if you're in one of those 11 counties. And other places around the country are facing the same thing. They might have a different amount of money in their pot, but they're going to be releasing the funds quickly, which is great. We need that. But it also means as the funds are released, that pot, you know, what's in the pot dwindles down. And once it's gone, unless there's additional relief granted later. But so go ahead and check with your, you know, jump online and find what you can for that initial $10,000, well, that initial grant that was available to small businesses, and apply. The applications are very, very simple. And you can, you know, Google it to find out which one would be available based on your county. But if you're in Kent, it's through the Right Place to just go straight to them and get your application in. I think application deadline closes at 5 today.
Okay.
When is
so,
can you apply for more than one business? If you own more than one business, can you apply?
In terms of that specific grant, I don't know if you can or not, but what I would advise is that let them tell you no. There is so much for anyone to process right now, and I do believe that all of the government and nonprofit organizations that are going to work collectively to administer these things, all of the banks, I do think that we're going to see a lot of grace from them, understanding that people cannot become experts on this immediately. And so ask, and then if they say no, they say no. There are a couple other areas for some financial relief, though, that you're going to want to check out. There are the economic disaster loans. Now, those are generally available to us. So, for example, if your business gets taken out by a fire, then you would normally have that available to you. And now under the CARES Act, which has come in specifically for COVID, right? It's the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. That has a totally different provision under it. And I think a lot of people are getting the two confused, right? Where they're thinking that the disaster loan that's always been there for small businesses is the same thing, not separate. They are exclusive. You don't get both. We are experiencing one disaster. If you're in a state where they have declared it a disaster, you don't need to prove disaster to apply under the CARES Act. Everybody gets it, right? Under the economic disaster loans, you normally would have to, under different circumstances, have to prove that you experienced a disaster. You don't under CARES. The big one under CARES is the Paycheck Protection Program. Yep. So that's the one that everybody's looking to. If you have not applied, don't worry, you're actually not able to apply yet. Applications are not available until the 3rd. There's a draft that you can take a look at. You can start working on your draft right now, also so that you can find out what information you don't currently know. So for example, one of the people that you want to get on your speed dial is your bookkeeper and your accountant. And if you are a person who says, I'm bad with numbers, this is the time to get good with numbers, right? Necessity is the mother of change, right? I mean, this is a perfect time to start getting better at your numbers. You want to stay on top of them. You're going to need them current to even apply for some of these things. Almost any of them, you're going to need to have an updated profit and loss sheet ready to go, not just for this month, but historic, and certainly not just historic, but for where you are right now. You're going to need to stay on top of your numbers. Yeah. Sorry, did you have specific questions? I don't want to just.
I do. Well, no, I have one question about that. So right now we've got banker and accountant, obviously, on our team. Lawyer, because we're talking to you, so there's obviously some clarity in having a lawyer that can help give some guidance on that as well. So I guess one question that I have just for myself, which is why I'm really doing this, right, is that I have notes, right? Tons of notes. Hopefully you guys do too. But one thing is, this idea of, especially a significant amount of our audience, obviously Megan and I are independent contractors. Significant amount of them are in the real estate space. Not everybody on this is going to be in that space, but this idea of, I have commission dollars coming in still for 30 to 45 days from now. So my books might look not like in the spring, they should be full. They are not full, but they might be break even, right? For 30 days from now, I'm still breaking even in my profit loss statement. But in June and July, I might not look as good, or at the end of the year, I might not have the bandwidth savings that I'm supposed to have to make it through winter. How do I balance what I, should be filling out and qualifying for now, compared to this idea of future? Like, I don't have this panic yet. I will, but I'm not feeling this yet. How do I balance that? Like, I have income still coming in, but it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, the government, I think, has anticipated this, right? Which is, is also a really important topic, is the timeline. When are we going to feel anything that's normal at all? I'll tell you, I kind of stopped in my tracks when I started looking at this, because the period that the government is really considering actually is fairly long, right? It goes until, I believe, June 30th. I have 1 million pieces of paper, so I can dig in to confirm it. But when I saw that, I thought, oh, wait, that means that the government is anticipating us to be incurring damages through the end of June. And that took the wind right out of me. I honestly, it took me an evening to just, I need to step away for a little while. You know how you're hopeful, right? That when we all got the news, and like it felt like our lives changed in overnight, and we went 5 days, and that 5 days felt like 5 months, and then we're thinking, well, when are we going to be done? In 2 weeks? We're done in 2 weeks, and slowly over that 2 week period, we're like, how about a month? 2 months? 2 months, right? And the time just kind of gets longer and longer. But to answer your question, the government has clearly anticipated this pain isn't going to let up for a while. So what you always have to do, which I know you're doing, you're not asking for anything different, is the books are what they are. You'll just have to submit them. I would get in, even if I don't see the damage on my books yet. Don't worry. They know that it's coming for you, particularly with realtors, right? And so you can go ahead and put down, because they're already asking the question on these applications, what will your damages be in June? And it's going to break your heart to have to answer that question.
Right.
But yeah, you can go ahead and put, a lot of my damages are still yet to come.
Yeah. Okay. So Megan, did you have another question that you wanted to ask?
No, I think I liked the idea of looking at it from a standpoint of the next 30 days. We're all in these like 3 and 5 and 7 year plans. And now it's like, okay, what's that really look like right now? But I did see with my husband's business, Evenbound, all of the P&L stuff. So I think for anybody who is a broker, you need to head into that space. And then
Yeah.
I know Sarah Howard has said that she'll talk about the 1099 employees and what's opening up from that standpoint, but I did that this morning just so I could see what it would be like for my folks as they went through it. And it did answer directly that question you just asked about incoming commissions. There is a drop down that says, you know, are you still being paid for work that you did previous to this time? So I was surprised too and encouraged, like, wow, they're really catching up with this. Because I sat there and went, how do I answer this? Like, I haven't really been paid. I don't know that it will close. And then answered it correctly. And then boom, there came the drop down menu. So
I mean, I will say that there really has been a lot of thought put into this. Like this is not just fluff. This is also not a solution, right? I mean, I don't want anybody to pretend that this solves the problem for small business owners. This is a shot of oxygen for small business owners. You need to look at every opportunity you have under it, apply. And if they come back and say, nope, you can't have this one because this is what works for you. The Paycheck Protection Program is nice because there is the possibility of parts of it being forgiven, and anything that we don't have to repay as small business owners will be a huge help. The reason that even if you think, I don't know if I'll be able to use the loan proceeds exactly as they say, because maybe my head count will go down. Maybe I can't keep everybody on staff, or maybe the wages will go down, right? So to be able to get parts of the loan forgiven, or however much of the loan forgiven, what they want to see is that you maintain your staff, right? It's a paycheck protection. It's not to protect owners, it's to protect owners protecting their staff. It's so that you have money, so that you can have staff, so that you can continue to operate. And if you use those funds on your staff, and there's a whole bunch of different provisions, and we can get into the weeds a little bit if you want, but if you're using it for these handful of things that would all count, right, which would include tips and all these sorts of things, if it's going to the right spot, then that money will get forgiven for you. And if it doesn't go to that, if you can't maintain staff, if you can't pay them what you're used to paying them and want to pay them, then it becomes a loan. So you're not in trouble. You're not, they don't come and take the money away. It just means you have the opportunity to have this money that's coming into your account be forgiven, so that you never have to repay it if it's used the way they have asked. And if you can't do all these things, you can't meet the bar, even if you hope to, and it doesn't work out the way you want, then it's just a new debt, and the interest is capped at 4%, and odds are you can get it for a little bit less. What else is great is no personal guarantee required, no collateral required. You don't have to put your home on the line for it. So I really encourage every business owner to look at that Paycheck Protection Program.
Tammy is asking about, how should we best determine how to apply, or how much to apply for the uncertainty of like the reopening timeline. But I think that goes to what you just said, and really looking at your P&L and seeing, what is the loss look like, and then making those numbers work. Or you're just going to say apply for as much as you can possibly get.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah. We will not be able to sidestep a recession. It is coming. It is coming. I'm hopeful we avoid a depression. And in a recession, cash is king. We are in a very different space right now than we will be in 3 months and in 6 months. People haven't even gone through a full payroll cycle without people being paid. Today, is it Friday? It's not Friday. Friday, right? I know, it's just such what day is it? I'm still paying people for work that was done before we closed. But now we give it another cycle, and there aren't new checks coming. And, for us, we're a cycling studio. This isn't most people's primary income, but for many of the places that have closed, and Tammy is an example, right? She has huge staff. Bengoy, I've been having a lot of communication with them, 70 people on a staff, right? We go through a full payroll cycle where people aren't putting that new money in their bank. it's going to really change in 6 months, particularly because some of the other protections that are out there right now relate to evictions. And we have some protections in place, but as far as I know, I could be corrected, as far as I know, at the end of that period, right, like we're right now in a period where people cannot get evicted, it's being told. I've not seen something that says the money's not owed. It just tolls an eviction process.
Right.
So after that period expires, unless there's a new executive order, which would be devastating to landlords, it says renters can stay rent-free for months on end. I mean, you can just imagine the dominoes that start to fall on that.
Right.
In that case, what about interest on these loans?
It's capped on the Paycheck Protection Program. It's capped at 4%. It doesn't mean that you couldn't come in with something a little bit lower. This is a great time. I mean, interest rates are still low. If you have a good relationship with your banker and you want to be able to talk about lines of credit, some of the lines of credit have really, really low interest rates. The banks they're buzzing with business right now. So I don't discourage people from doing that. And now is a much better time than in 4 months, 6 months, where things could be a little harder. Yeah. I'm not expecting 4 months from now to be easier than today, right? It will be harder.
Unless you pivot, Sarah, unless you pivot.
but as we pivot, right? As we pivot, we all know this will take time, right? Yeah. This will take time. But right now, this is a great time for people to be figuring out how they can revamp. I do think that we're going to see some really cool stuff come out of businesses during this period. But cash is king. Get your hands on as much of it as you can. Hold on to it as much as you can without having poor ethics, right? Sure. Don't screw the people that are good to you. Don't just because you feel like you have shelter from it. There are other people downstream who are counting on people who can.
Right. Yeah. So in that sort of people that help, right? So we've talked about like who needs to be on your team. For that payroll protection part of it, it sounds like it's very number driven and very like precise, right? This is my payroll now, and I adjust it to this. Is that okay? Is that not okay? That's your accountant that typically is going to help you through that in this period right now, Sarah. I know that we need to help ourselves and educate us. I'm not saying like don't get educated, but at the end of it, who is that person that if I'm hiring it out is the person that I should have on the team that's helping me through the payroll protection part of that loan?
Yeah, in my opinion, there has never been a better time to evaluate your relationship with your accountant and your bookkeeper. If you do your own books, this is a good time to tap into the expertise of somebody else to look over your shoulder. If you have an accountant that you trust because they're nice, this is a good time to confirm that they have the horsepower to deliver. There are a handful of things that get you to your loan/grant number. So for example, with the payroll protection program, the size of the loan that you get or potentially grant is 250% of your average monthly payroll. Now, if I say that to you, it's 250% of your average monthly payroll, you are going to assume, oh, that's the check that I cut to my employees, right?
I didn't, but I understand where you're going with it.
Well, I think a lot of people would say, oh, my payroll, the money that I pay to my employees. But it's not. There's a bunch of people. And for people who own bars or have any kind of like, the whole gig scene, tips get included in here. And you're not, as the employer, paying their tips. It includes cash tips or the equivalent of tips. You need to get your arms around, what people were then earning as tips. Health benefits counted in there, state or local taxes that were assessed on employee comp, retirement benefits, vacation, parental leave, sick leave, commissions, all those things. And you want to get your number as big as you can get it ethically, of course, always ethically, because that's going to determine the amount of cash you can get your hands on. And the amount of cash that you're able to hold right now, that's our life support in this period, because most of us have zero revenues unless and until we're able to pivot to charge from inside our homes with businesses that don't, operate from inside our homes. So you're gonna want to have a really good bookkeeper who can help you look at those numbers and ask them questions. Ask them a lot of questions. And same thing for an accountant, right? The accountants generally will interpret and help you with the numbers that your bookkeeper puts together. If you hand over your P&L to your accountant, that P&L is the sum of many small decisions that have been made along the way, right? How do I categorize this? How do I categorize this? And so if you've been doing it incorrectly, if your bookkeeper has been doing it incorrectly, your accountant is going to be giving you potentially bad advice because they're relying on all the good micro decisions that go into this macro decision. So good accountant, good bookkeeper, never been a better time to find those folks.
Dawn has a good question. What if you own a business and don't have employees, but your family will personally feel the effects of the loss?
Well, this is a really interesting point. One of my favorite humans and I have recently been talking about on several occasions, really, the importance of paying yourself. So if you've been paying yourself a salary, most small business owners are horrible at that, right? We just take whatever's left over. If you've been paying yourself a salary, that's going to constitute payroll. If you have not been taking any form of salary or any form of compensation, and you just use whatever are leftover profits, it might be interpreted differently. That's really, in my opinion, that's a great accounting question, but if it might be harder. It was always important for business owners to pay themselves. Now is one of those days where we see maybe why that, one more reason why that's important.
Because we can use that amount towards payroll. Because I think a lot of business owners are trying to decide, do they cut their own personal payroll right now to protect the greater good of the company? But ultimately, in doing that, we might actually hurt the opportunity of the company by not getting the loan, is what you're telling me.
Right.
That, I'm so glad you asked that. I think that is one of the most important questions to be asked, because cutting your payroll right now does not prevent you from getting protection, assistance under CARES Act. If you need to reduce your headcount or reduce what you're paying folks right now to be able to survive, do that immediately. Do not use up the cash reserves that you have in the hopes that at a future point you get a loan. Don't cash strap yourself as a business to be a better borrower, right? Make smart decisions as a business owner right now. Now, I'll also say this: people count. Our people count. They have showed up for us, and we need to show up for them however we can. That might mean that we lay them off, because the government has put in some very helpful protections with unemployment right now. And they honestly, unemployment we could do for them right now, depending on how our cash flow works, what opportunities we have as business owners to bring in revenue. And so if you have employees who will fare better on unemployment right now, and keeping them on your payroll only cash straps you, this is the reality we're all dealing with right now. If they will fare better, then do that. Help them, right? But what you can do, or maybe, is if you can keep people on in pretty reduced capacities, and they can, not fare better on unemployment, maybe what you're doing is job sharing, right? maybe what you're doing is you're reducing their income. But let's not underestimate the psychological impact of having a job. There is huge, huge psychological impact of knowing that you still have a place to report to, you still have value to offer in your day. You are valuable enough that your employer said, I can't lose you, I just can't. There is a tremendous psychological impact. You have to, as an employer, evaluate, where can I put the person in the best financial position? Is it by laying them off, or is it by creating some job shares with some reduced wages? Everybody gets it. Nobody's gonna be mad, nobody's gonna hold a grudge. If they do, weed them out of your life. But I just wanted to mention that because, one, people are thinking that they have to have a full payroll right now to get relief under the CARES Act. You don't. Remember, that is the difference between, does it convert into forgivable funds, or does it become a loan at a very low interest with no personal guarantee and no collateral? That's the difference. Take care of your cash flow, protect your business, protect your people, and then get your hands on as much cash as you can.
Yeah, so I think the only thing that I would ask, and I don't know if you have the questions, which is really probably our banker that we need to get on right now, Megan, as we go through this thing over the next couple of weeks, would be the parameters of approval or not approval of those loans, right? So I think it's good to say, well, I want to get a small business loan. Here's my books. There's the CARES Act out there, but just because the CARES Act out there, am I guaranteed a loan, right? Do I, how does that play out, right? Which it doesn't. And is a bank going to be looking at me as a business owner saying, okay, well, I know you're not going to be making money in 3 months from now, so you're a risk. I'm not going to give you a small business loan. How does the bank play into that component from the banking side of, here's the criteria to, no, this is a government entity loan?
So these loans are 100% federally guaranteed. These are about as low risk as a bank could ever, hope for.
Yeah.
The banks will be okay. The application, I believe, is really going to go through the Small Business Association. At least what I've seen online, you put those together. And I am cognizant that the way that this reads is that the maximum amount anybody would be able to get is the 250% up, which means, just like with the grants that are being administered through the right place, it's a maximum of $10,000. It doesn't mean that people are going to get $10,000 even if they have lost 20. Right. It's a lot of money. I mean, this is the largest package we've ever seen in U.S. history, but the damage is catastrophic, absolutely catastrophic, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Right? In terms of, if you really put together all of the loss that all of the small business owners are going to experience, all of the individuals and all of the large businesses, right? Because the CARES Act is about more than small businesses. It's really trying to help all the different groups in the economy. It is enormous, the largest thing we've ever seen, and it is just the tip of the iceberg of the actual harm, economic harm, that we will see by the end of this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Sara, I want to probably wrap it up because there'll be plenty of more questions that are going to just sort of keep running. And so if you don't mind, you're going about your day, just responding to a couple of those. And then, how would someone, if someone wants to hire you on the law side as part of their team, how would they get a hold of you? And then do you have any closing words for us?
Sure. Honestly, the very best way to get a hold of me right now is by texting me. I'm terrified of saying that, but it just is. There's so much information that's flooding in right now. And so you can just text me 616-446-2115. It's the fastest way to get me. I know my voice sounds horrible, but I'm still happy to jump on a call, and I'm happy to just help people as best I can right now. We're all in this together, and we just have to, as a community, lock arms and get through this.
Thank you. Megan, do you have any last words of thoughts or any questions that you might have?
You have one other question in here, so I just want to make sure that we, because this isn't about us, right? But
Yep.
It is all about us. It's all about all of us, right? So just apologizing if it was asked already, but can you apply for the payroll and the economic disaster loan, both?
You can apply for them both. They are mutually exclusive. You will get one or the other. Yeah, but what happens is, if you had already applied for the economic disaster loan before the CARES Act even came out, then you can still apply for the Paycheck Protection Program, and you'll only get one or the other. But in the application process, the SBA will be reaching out to people, helping them correct items within their application, knowing that this is just a fire drill for everybody. And my understanding from the SBA is also helping people figure out where to pivot. The payroll protection program is likely going to be a better option for most people, because at least there's a possibility of loan forgiveness there, where there's not under the economic disaster loans, or the disaster loans. But the PPP is coming out on Friday. If you haven't already applied for the economic disaster, in my personal opinion, I would apply for it and then apply for the other on Friday. But I also, all this is coming out rapid fire. It doesn't hurt to call the SBA directly and see what the latest word is on that. Last I was told, you can apply for one and apply for the other, and they'll just move you into one or the other depending on what will work best. But they are exclusive.
I have so much gratitude for you and all of the time and energy that you've put into this, and everyone for asking such great questions that I think we're all wondering about. But I'm really glad that you're my friend and that you took time to do this with all of us.
The feeling is completely mutual for both of you. You guys have showed up for me at really super important times, and we don't forget that, do we? We never forget the people who show up for us in the moments where we just feel like we're on the line. And I think we just have to do that for each other every single day right now. That's how we'll get through this.
Let's see her new businesses, like tattooing or like waxing.
I kind of want the tattoo
Where's Steve and I going next? We can't wait to see. I have the protein powder. I have like all of the things. Where are we going? So I'll be
stuff. I love it.
Steve and I are doing when we're done with quarantine.
Right. Coming August. That's my fingers crossed. Coming August.
Need no running.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Megan, and thank you all that tuned in to this, that participated in the conversation, gave us your questions, and we hope that this brought you value, as I'm sure it brought value to each of us just spending time with you. So thank you. Join in tomorrow. We're going to do the same thing, but with Mr. Aaron Buer from Ada Bible Church, about how the church is leading and what they are doing in this time of transition. So thank you so much. Megan, we're not allowed to sneeze or cough on camera.
And I do realize I touched my face, so I'm like,
we're out. I've been touching my face all the time. I'm in my garage though. Good. All right, we're out. Thank you so much. See you guys.
Thank you. Take care.